lot of times we use the term pest management rather than pest control. Pest control insinuates that we have a fire and we put out the fire and then there's no problem. But actually, as you see with these bedbug reintroductions, there are constantly threats of the fire starting again. So instead, we have to really focus on prevention, monitoring, and that's why it's management, because it never really ends. There's never a point when we say, okay, now we're done with bedbug control.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever state, whatever city, whatever country that you are in. My name is Shofu Babalati, and this is another episode of the PestXperience Show. On today's episode, I have a wonderful researcher, not only just a researcher, an academia who is also vast and more experienced about pest and pest management. And today I have one and only Dr. Andrew Sutherland. Dr. Andrew Sutherland is the University of California's Urban Integrated Pest Management Advisor of the San Francisco Bay Area. This extension position is part of the UC statewide IPM program, UC IPM, and is provided by the UC Division of Agriculture and Natural Resources, UC ANR. In this position, Andrew serves pest management professionals by conducting applied research and education programs that are informed by regular needs assessment. This program aims to develop new IPM strategies. So as you are listening, you would learn to know that you're going to be learning new IPM strategies. All right. So, or to adapt and implement IPM strategies already available for key household, structural, and industrial pests. Andrew's current project involves topics such as biting mites in homes and other structures. Although I have a lot of questions on mites, ticks, and I know a lot of people are also looking at this particular pest that I've listed. So you want to stay to the end of the podcast to learn more about it. He's also looking at advanced monitoring tools for bedbugs, educational IPM videos, and hands-on education and training for the pest control industry. Welcome with me, Dr. Andrew Sutherland from the University of California. Welcome to the show.
Thank you
Dr.
for
Andrew.
having me. Yeah, it's a great conversation so far. Let's keep it going.
I've learned a couple of things before the camera, and now I'm still going to be learning a lot of things. So you are University of California Urban Pest Management Advisor, and I've attended a couple of webinars from the UC IPM, and I must say that first and foremost, this is my first opportunity of saying it out there that the UC IPM, you guys are doing a whole lot, and you're doing us pest management professionals a whole lot of good things, right? And I'm super excited. I'm super excited that it's such a beautiful idea is coming from the UC IPM webinars, those free webinars, those trainings, certification webinars that are there available for people to participate, to learn, to advance. That's a whole lot. And that is me saying we appreciate you, we love you, we celebrate you. Thank you very much for your consistent work in advancing pest management education. Thank you very much for joining hands together with other professionals like the IPM Institutes to organize webinars. I attended a couple of webinars from the IPM Institute, and I'm also part of the apprenticeship program. I think the only African that is actually part of the apprenticeship program by the IPM Institute. So thank you very much for your consistent educational system for advancing the world of pest management. And again, welcome to the PestXperience Show.
Yeah, urban pest control is the same or similar all over the world. And that was, I came to urban pest control from agricultural pest control.
Wow.
And that's very different because we grow different crops in different places, and each crop has its own uh, pest suite of pests or palette of pests.
Sure.
And so you can't necessarily share very much with a colleague who's on the other side of the world. But with urban pest control, we all deal with cockroaches, we all deal with rodents, We
Yeah.
all deal with termites. We all deal with ants, bed bugs. So we can learn from each other. And
Mm.
maybe the rules and regulations are different. Sometimes the products that we use are different, but the strategy is the same. And it's all very much working with people, helping people.
Exactly, exactly. And speaking of helping people, I don't know if you're aware about Pest Insights on my pest control business. So I have the aspect of Pest Insights, basically to educate people, homeowners, and schools majorly on pest management and urban pest management and integrated pest management. Basically, maybe not pesticide application, right? Maybe sanitation, habitat alteration, biology control, and all those kind of things. So we had our first training last week Saturday, just this Saturday, yeah, in University of Ibadan, where we trained about 95 students on pest management, bedbug control actually, because they were really, really badly infested with bedbugs. So we had to like train them on bedbug control and tell them the reasons why bedbugs are actually in their apartment and some major important things. Yeah, some major things that they don't know about bedbug control, understanding and breaking the cycle of bedbug control in the hostels and ensuring that there's a perfect solution with bedbugs in their apartment. So those are major things that we discussed in the training. And they were really, in fact, there's someone that actually stood up and gave us a review, like, oh, she didn't know that most of these things are caused by this or the signs of bedbugs and all kind of things. So we're actually looking forward to more universities, more households, more facilities to educate them. And again, educating is also is you are good as what you know. You are good at to the level of what you know or what you understand as a researcher to also know what exactly is going on currently in the industry, what are the latest advancements, what are the latest technology, what are the latest integrated pest management strategy, how can we get rid of most of these pests with or without using insecticides, or what type of pesticide are we meant to use, pesticide resistance, and those kind of things. So those are the things that we're going to be talking about in this episode of the Pest
Yeah,
Experience Show.
excellent. Yeah, you mentioned that the trainees were in housing,
No,
this
they were
particular
hostels.
bedbug training.
Yeah, they were in they're students. So students of University
Ah,
of Ibadan. So they are hostels.
okay.
They have different hostels in the university, different halls. So in each of all those, so basically like the University of Ibadan is like literally infested, so infested with bedbugs. And what I've noticed that they are likely using most of these agrochemicals, which has caused resistance over time. And because of agrochemicals, they don't have residual efficacy for a long period of time. So, and again, most of them don't kill the eggs of bedbugs. So there will always be reinfestation, there will always be reemergence of bedbugs all over and all over, all over. Right. So one thing we taught them there was one, understanding the type of pesticide that they're meant to use, which is public health and agrochemical. Then secondly, is also understanding where bed bugs hide, their hideouts, their locations, things that they need to detect, how they can actually inspect, how they can check for bed bugs, the signs of bed bugs, and how they can also secure and break the cycle. So there is always a cycle. When I was on campus, so I can go home now and carry an infested bed back to the house, back to my house. Then when I'm resuming back to school, I bring that infested bed back to school again because I've infested the home from bedbugs. So that cycle is always there. So even if the school carry out bedbug treatments, they will always still bring it back, right? Except if the school
Mhm.
look within and say, okay, you know what? Why don't you use residual product that has residual efficacy, like dust? So if they have dust, even though there's reinfestation around the edges and all those kind of things, the dust is meant to stay there for a long period of time. It keeps knocking them down if there's fresh new bed bugs that are coming inside the apartment. So we tell them about breaking the cycle, maybe not exposing them to dust application and all those kind of things, but we tell them about those things. And I feel like basically, one thing about this education thing is also helping people to give them perfect solution to solving the pest problem, not just the same stories all the time. So we don't want to tell them that same story all the time because they can actually use AI, they can use ChatGPT to get all these informations, right? So we are looking at
Yeah.
also how can we also support them, how can we give them opportunity to carry out bedbug treatments for them? Maybe some of them get on free treatment, or maybe at a discounted or subsidized rate. But all those things can actually they can be done. We can do them. but I mean, it's we're also in business. So
So what you're talking about with bed bugs and
yeah.
reintroduction is really important, and that's why a lot of times we use the term pest management rather than pest control. Pest control uh, insinuates that we have a fire and we put out the fire and then there's no problem. But actually, as you see with these bedbug reintroductions, there are constantly threats of the fire starting again. So instead, we have to really focus on prevention, monitoring, and that's why it's management because it never really ends. You know, there's never a point when we say, okay, now we're done with bed bug control. We have to always be thinking about um, preventing the next introduction, preventing the next infestation. And I think that's difficult for humans around the world because they want a quick and easy solution to pest problems, and it just doesn't exist.
Hmm. You know, but when we look at for instance, when we look at the university system, what I mean as a researcher, I think we should actually even start. Okay, but I'm going to take the intro maybe at the end or maybe towards
Okay.
at some part. So I'll take the intro at some part. So, but this is a very good start. The discussion here we're having is like it's a very good start. So, what do you think about bedbug control in a multi-populated facility like an hostel, right? And because of the fact that people are coming in from different parts and they are too much, they're always coming in all the time, and there's always reemergence and reinfestation like that. What do you think should be the best solution to solving such problem?
Yeah, I think it's about monitoring. So hopefully a facility like that has a regular monitoring program. So of
Mm,
course we can do bedbug inspections, and if we have a reproducing population, we're going to find it. But it's much more difficult to find the one introduced female, or perhaps a personal item like a backpack or laptop case that has eggs and some developing nymphs. Um,
mm,
so that's where your monitoring really comes in handy. And there aren't any perfect tools, but there are some good tools. I don't know if you have used any of the interceptor traps. These are pitfalls that catch bed bugs as they wander, uh, in most cases, wandering from their harborage to a host. They climb up, they get stuck inside these devices. So that's one approach. Another is to establish what we call harborage monitors or harborage traps, which are just objects that mimic um, good hiding places for bed bugs. So it could just be a piece of cardboard with some crevices that the bed bugs
mm,
like to hide in. Um, so I
mm,
think that's the trick, whether you're doing really good visual inspections, using monitoring devices. Regularly, we have to be looking for these things. Sometimes there are policies we can institute. So you mentioned a hostel. So a hostel, you have guests, they're bringing their personal items. But if it's a resident of that facility and they live there for a while, then you can start to discuss policies or precautions. So, for instance, we have major issues with bed bugs in apartment complexes in certain areas in the U.S., especially if they are unfortunately the low income communities tend to have the bigger problems with these. But a lot of times there are secondhand furniture items that are brought in.
mm,
So you mentioned the
mm.
mattress or some bedding.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you don't have much money and you need a new mattress, you see one on the side of the road, hey, it looks like it's in pretty good shape, but it
Mm,
could have a reproducing population right there on it. And if
Mm,
I don't know how to do that inspection, or if I don't even know what's a bed bug, what do they look like, then I'll bring that reproducing population and create a problem for the community.
mm,
Yeah, so to answer your question, I think it's about monitoring, and then if you have a resident population, then prevention through precautionary behavior.
mm. So basically, I mean, I think we're on the very right part by first educating them about prevention, reinfestation, breaking the cycle. I feel like the university system actually needs to look further into consistent monitoring of these bedbug cases, as you said. And talking about monitoring traps, in fact, not I don't know if you heard of Nataro Labs. Nataro Labs produces one of the best monitoring traps and law. So the trap comes with a law, a pheromone law that attracts the bedbugs inside of it. So it mimics the bedbug smell. Bedbug has this musty odor, so it mimics that odor. It's attract them into the trap from Nataro Lab. So I am actually the distributor, sole distributor here in Nigeria. I have some of their product. Also, you also have this diameter sheet at tip, bedbug tip, Nataro Scout tip. So that when the bed bugs crawl into it, it has diatomaceous ants inside of it, silicon dioxide. It knocks them down, dehydrates them with time. And that's one of the most natural products that you can ever find in the market that actually works perfectly well. So Natural Labs is like, so I mean, those products are available. Another challenge is, are people well educated about these things? Are they well educated about, but every household actually needs pest control. Every household needs pest control, but there is still a backlog of awareness there. So that's what we are doing at Pest Insights to educate people. All right. I mean, so I mean, before behind the camera, we've learned a couple of things, and we were talking about bedbug control in the university system. Then, but my first question is about IPM. There is a
Uh,
new word about APM, assessment-based pest management, and IPM. I also have a friend, George 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 Bidoya, PCO George Bidoya, Mr. George Bidoya,
uh,
um, who has also talked about that. Okay, I mean, there's a big misconception about IPM and stuff like that. So I want you, as a researcher, to help us, elaborate more about integrated pest management itself.
yeah. Well, IPM was a concept developed by agriculture,
Mm,
50, 60 years ago or more. And I think in some cases we try to apply it to urban systems, but there has been resistance.
mm,
Um, I think that the traditional agricultural IPM model does not always fit. And the number one reason why is because the thresholds
mm,
for urban pests are much, much lower than for
mm,
agricultural pests. So in traditional agricultural IPM, you can tolerate some level of pest because you don't lose money in your crop until the pest density gets to a certain level,
yeah.
or perhaps you have natural enemies,
Mm,
predators and parasites that are flying around and eating your pests or parasitizing your pests in your crop. So
mm,
um, there's this concept of thresholds where we do nothing until our pest density reaches a certain threshold. Well, if you're talking about something like bed bugs or German cockroaches or some other public health pest, mosquitoes, for instance, that are
yeah.
carrying pathogens or parasites, the threshold is basically one animal. If you find one bed bug, you have to do something about it. You can't wait until
Fantastic.
you have five or six or whatever. So that is the reason I think that the traditional model of IPM has not been adopted in the same way by urban practitioners as it has by agricultural practitioners. um, the goal of agricultural IPM is to basically reduce costs, reduce
Mm,
operational costs when you're growing a crop. So you still have to manage the pests, but at what level and using what tactics? Urban pest control the pest control itself is the service.
Mm.
And so that's another problem is sometimes people who have a particular business model may see IPM as a threat to their business model. And they say,
Mm.
oh, well, my business model is treatment, but you're telling me I have to wait and I have to prevent and I have to monitor before I can do any treatment.
You're right.
So they see that as a threat to the business model.
Mm.
So that's why we have had others try to rebrand or reimagine IPM, even though we're using the same concepts. Uh, you know, so you mentioned
Yes.
assessment-based pest management, APM. So
Yes.
Deanie Miller, she's a colleague at Virginia Tech University. She coined this phrase. And it makes a lot of sense. It basically means before we make our treatments, we need to assess the problem.
Yes.
And what she's talking about there is monitoring, you know,
Mm.
which is one of the central tenets of agricultural IPM. Um, but she goes even further to say, based on your information that you gain from monitoring, you can design your treatments to be efficient in time and space. So if you are serving an apartment complex that maybe has 50 units, you're not going to use the same treatment in an apartment that has 300 cockroaches as you are a apartment that only has five cockroaches
I've
on your
cockroaches.
monitor.
Mm.
So that's the general idea of the assessment-based pest management. But I would argue that it is IPM. If you look at the central tenets of IPM, it includes monitoring.
Yeah.
Of course, it includes thresholds. And I think that if we just reduce the threshold in urban IPM to one, we found evidence of one, then
Yeah.
we can choose the appropriate tactic. So, yeah, I think that IPM has an identity crisis in urban pest systems, but
Yeah.
it's still valid. We just have to find ways to communicate it so that it applies and so it's not threatening. It should not threaten pest control work at all.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
and
I feel like,
actually,
yeah.
in California, we have a number of pest control operators who have adopted the use of this word or this term IPM sometimes in the name of their company. So they have IPM in the name of their company, and they're not afraid of it. You know,
True.
they use exclusion. They
Exclusion.
provide exclusion services. They don't just
Mm.
spray and pray. They actually will go and try to exclude rodents or other pests from entering structures.
Yeah.
They use non-chemical tactics. We have a lot of heat treatments for bed
Yes.
bugs, for instance, or desiccant treatments. Um, and then they do use effective chemical tactics as well. But all
Mm.
of that is within this IPM framework. And I think it is very attractive to some consumers, that understand what's happening.
Exactly.
So it's
Exactly.
growing.
Exactly. I feel like one of the major thing is proper education of the consumers, proper education of people would help in understanding this world of pest control. I think, for instance, based on what you said, that a lot of people or businesses basically they are used to this word of just in Nigeria they call it fumigating, right? In fact, my name was initially SB Fumigation, but I had to change it to rebrand totally to SB Super Pest Solutions because we don't even do fumigation at all. And I mean, we started using fumigation because a lot of people if you go to Google Trends now just to check keyword research, you discover that if you're not using fumigation in your brand or in your name, you might not rank or you might not even get customers because they are used to that word fumigation. So that's why we use that as our name. But I mean, as we grow, we're now 6 years now, we discover that this is not it's not carrying the global vision of what we intend to do on the long run. So we have to rebrand. So a lot of businesses are used to that word of just coming to spray their apartment and pray, like you said in your words, to spray their apartment. But we are now also educating these people. So you can only work with clients who properly understand what pest control involves, basically. And that's why on our own platform, we usually just talk about pest control with the pest insights, right? Educate people about pest control so that when they're coming to us, they're not just saying that, oh, I want to get rid of bed bugs. I don't want to spray. And we start explaining. So we just put that educational information for free out there to reduce so much stress in our conversation indirectly, right? So those are major things. So and I discovered that, like you said, people would move and they will learn. There's all of a sudden ChatGPT came into the world and people are already used to tech and all those kind of things. So with time, when we are really also determined in the pest control industry, we would get to the point whereby every consumer is actually well educated about these things. And they will start requesting for, oh, I just want exclusion. Oh, I just want you to control their habitats, control where they are staying. Maybe not spray. I just want you to bait, just bait for me, and that's all. So those are the things. So how has the application of IPM evolved, in urban pest control like bed bugs? How has it helped bed bug control? How has it helped cockroach control? Then also in terms of cockroach control, we understand that cockroach control actually cockroach infestation or insect infestation generally are the major reasons why we have war gecko. So I want to ask this particular question about how, as a researcher, how effectively can a professional get rid of wall geckos in a client's apartment or in a business apartment or in a commercial facility?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. Let's start with how culture drives business. The
Mm,
culture is changing all over the world. Um, First off, your industry is changing because you
mm,
have more information, you have more training, you have better tools. But a lot of times we are faced with this older culture where
mm.
our consumers, our customers, they demand, as you say, fumigation. They have
Yes.
this older mentality that I hired you to come and spray a poison, or to liberate a fumigant.
Mm,
Um, And really, this is applied ecology. Pest control is applied ecology. In
mm,
order to be good at your job, you have to understand. And so people don't always understand that. They, they may see this as a service that is very simple. Spray
mm,
something, the pest dies. And
mm,
maybe decades ago, that was true in some cases. We have learned from previous decades that perhaps those approaches were not sustainable. Either we were creating environmental hazard or we were creating community health hazard with some of these
true.
materials that we use in the past. But we still have this culture that expects, hey, I called you because I have a fire. Come put out the fire. But we are not, that's not how we do things. It's not pest control, it's pest management. It never really ends. So I
Mm,
think it requires a lot of education, and it's not going to happen quickly because we are battling culture. Culture
mm,
changes slowly. Education takes time.
mm,
So I think there are, and the other problem is economic pressure sometimes leads our customers to hire the provider with the lowest cost. This is really often true in housing or industrial locations where there's a budget and maybe we get three or four different quotes for the service,
yeah,
and it's natural for us to look at the lowest cost.
at the lowest
Well,
cost.
the lowest cost is usually going to be the lowest input. You
Mm,
know, they may not be considering the pest system as an applied ecological system. Maybe they are using what I call spray and pray, because that's
mm.
really all you're doing. You spray and then you pray that it's
Great.
going to work, right? Um, but I think that's slowly changing. Um, I'm in an area of the world where people have the privilege of worrying about environmental hazards and community hazards. Some places, um, we don't have that luxury. But I live in an area where people are always very concerned about what's happening around them, and it's definitely a
Hmm.
kind of privilege. But to this message that, hey, we don't just come and spray. We try to understand your situation and we look for solutions that represent the least harm or the least negative impact. Um, One thing about bed bugs are kind of the IPM poster child because
Hmm.
you cannot manage bed bugs with just one tactic. There is no magic spray
Yeah.
where you can knock out a bed bug population. So that has helped us to teach people, especially in housing in the US. Maybe in the past they were used to hiring somebody who would come and spray for cockroaches or apply baits for cockroaches. It requires some education, some prevention, some monitoring, some non-chemical tactics like heat or steam or vacuum or desiccants. And then sometimes we use insecticides, but that is not the primary tool.
Hmm.
So I think bed bugs have taught people that, hey, this is not that easy. We're going to have to really consider the whole system. So I think it's slowly changing, and those people in the industry who are smart and are forward thinking are riding this wave.
Hmm.
They're able to see the change happening. They're positioning themselves and their team with better education, better tools, better understanding of the system, and they're making money and they're doing very well. So I think it's changing and it's a good thing, but it's very slow. And it's
Amazing.
not, yeah, you can't find the change in all places in the world.
Hmm.
Even in California, I can go to communities that have a culture that expects quarterly general insecticide spray around their home,
Yeah.
you know, not because they have a pest problem, but because everybody else in the neighborhood does it. So
Hmm.
it's still rooted in culture.
Amazing. Amazing. So I want to ask you made mention of something about advanced methods that some other organizations or pest control companies are actually following the trend, right? And trying to position themselves properly. In terms of equipment, what equipments that you think are the latest equipments that professionals needs to be using? If you can make recommendations of some of them, it would be nice. If you can list their names so for people to learn basically. Then my second question will come afterwards.
Yeah, I would say primarily monitoring and detection equipment. The
Mm,
problem is it doesn't always exist. Some of it is still developing. Um, so in California, we have a major pest problem with drywood termites. These are
okay.
termites that have no connection to the soil. Their colonies are entirely within wood,
Yes.
and they're very difficult to detect because we
Mm,
have a wall covering, sometimes some insulation material, and then we have the wooden structure behind that. So the
mm,
termites are inside that wooden structure, and the default treatment over time has been fumigation of the entire structure, where we put
okay.
a tarp over
Tent.
the structure, we inject a lethal gas, um, but we do that because it's so difficult to find the termites in there.
Mm,
If we could find them, then we could drill a hole to access the gallery. We could
yeah.
inject desiccants, contact insecticides, all kinds of materials, but it's so difficult to do. So there's, I think, a need for us to develop better detection tools there. Some people use infrared, you know. Have
Yes.
you ever used infrared, like an infrared
Right.
thermometer?
Thermometers to check the heat level and all these kind of things. Yeah. I've seen it, but
Yeah,
I mean I've not used it before, but I've seen videos like people apply
yeah.
it.
Or a moisture meter.
Yeah,
They
moisture
have
meter. Yes, yes,
these
yes,
handheld devices that
yes.
can measure differences in moisture,
Yeah.
perhaps behind the wall coverings. You can actually
Mm.
use moisture meters to detect cockroach aggregations, bed bug aggregations, rodent presence. Um,
Wow.
so I think detection tools like this are very important. Um, I think we see it happening with um, video, the use
Mm.
of wildlife cameras or other remote sensing devices for rodents. It's happening.
Mm.
So that's an area I think of importance is detection equipment. When it comes to application equipment, um, my favorite kind of new type of application equipment is a power duster.
Power
So
toaster.
I like to use desiccants for bed bugs. I like to use desiccants for cockroaches. And the traditional application method is using a bulb duster, where
Yeah.
you have a diaphragm and you squeeze it
Yes, yeah,
and
it's
you
squeeze,
you
yes.
inject the dust. But that can be difficult to get uniform coverage. So they have
Mm.
a number of new battery powered power
Wow.
dusters that have an internal diaphragm that's uh, metering out the pressure and helping you to get a more uniform
Mm.
dispersal of your dust or desiccant. So that's my favorite application equipment that I've been using lately.
Amazing.
Um, but I mean, the old equipment still works, so
Yes.
pressurized sprayers, they still work. Um, Even aerosols, if we're using, so it's really not about the equipment always. It's sometimes about the choice of the product.
Mm.
And in most cases, we have really good equipment for applying the products out there already.
Amazing. Amazing. So I want to ask this question before because you made mention of a power duster and a bedboard control. So I've seen some professionals, when they want to carry out bedbug control, for instance, they tend to spray the bed with insecticides, right? Number one, is that right? And number two, um, what is the best? Is it also advisable to put in residual dust on the bed, like the edges of the bed, the seams of the bed round, instead of so as to apply, or instead of the insecticide? Is it good to apply the insecticide on the bed, the edges of those bed, or just put in the dust? And what type of dust, what active ingredient of the dust, if you want to make mention of that, that would also help, that we can look forward to.
Yeah. So to answer this question, we think about the ecology of the bedbug.
Mm.
So bedbugs are nest parasites. That means they don't live on our bodies, they live in our nest.
Mm.
And a human's nest is anywhere where he sleeps or rests. So it could be the bed, it could be the sofa. Uh, Sometimes it's the computer chair. If you sit in your chair for 3, 4, 5 hours at a time.
True.
So the bed bug needs to travel from its harborage location, which will be a crevice within a meter or two of the nest, and the host when they're sleeping or resting. So uh, we have two general kinds of insecticides to consider:
Mm.
contact insecticides and residual
A
insecticides.
residual
So
insecticide.
the contact insecticide really is only effective if it makes contact with the insect.
Yes.
And so those could be used if you know where the harborage is. Let's say you know where the bed bugs are, but you can't get to them. Maybe they're deep in a crevice. If you can get a contact insecticide to penetrate, you can kill the bug.
Mm.
Most professionals use residual insecticides for bed bugs, and anywhere in theory between the harborage and the host could be a good place for a residual insecticide.
Mm.
And what you're trying to do is establish a deposit of that
Deposit.
residue so that the bed bug gets exposed when he crawls across, he or she crawls across. The problem is bed bugs walk on their the tips of their tarsi, just a
Mm.
tiny little surface area comes into contact with that residue. And so residual insecticides don't work as well for bed bugs as you think they do. Um,
Mm.
some of them may provide some control, but think about how limited that uh, exposure is for that
Exposure.
insect. It's just walking on its tiptoes, maybe for 3 seconds as they walk across your deposit.
Mm.
So I think that residual insecticides have a place. Um, my personal preference is not to apply insecticides where people come into contact with them. Even though
Fantastic.
we know a little bit about acute health and safety of
Yes.
insecticides, we don't always know about chronic health and safety
Mm.
associated with insecticide exposure. So, if I were making a treatment for bed bugs, I try to limit the exposure to the people in that space. So that means I typically would not make applications on a bed. However, in some cases, the bed bugs actually are living on the bed. They're
Yeah.
not living in a crevice 2 meters away. They're actually living
On the bed.
underneath the rolled seam of the mattress or something. In that case, you may be able to physically remove them, you know,
Mm.
using vacuums or adhesives or contact insecticide could be very useful in a case like that. Your
Amazing.
question about dust is important. I think dust is a really valuable insecticide application because it has long residual activity.
Yeah.
If you get a dust into a crevice or a void and it stays dry and it stays protected from ultraviolet light, it can remain effective for years, providing control for years within that crevice or void. A spray gets broken down quickly, so
Yes.
a residue
Yes.
of a spray may only last for a couple weeks, maybe a month, but a dust can stay active for a long time. But with that in mind, I use dusts in areas where they will not get inhaled by people.
Mm. Mm.
So if we put dust on a mattress, when somebody sits or lays down on that mattress, some of the dust is up in the air.
True.
So I don't like to use dust in that way. Although there are some products that are labeled for use like that. Um, even the desiccants, even diatomaceous earth, even silica dioxide, they can irritate our lungs when we breathe them in. So I
Mm.
always try to apply them in places where they will not get stirred up into the air. So did that
Mm.
answer your question?
Fantastic, fantastic. That was a very, 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 very robust research induced answer. I really appreciate you for that. So my other question I was trying to ask about wall gecko, how do you think is the best strategy to get rid of wall geckos? Because I know that wall geckos are attracted into the apartments based on the food that they feed on, which are insects, right? And for us, basically, what we usually do for wall gecko is just much as possible to block all the entry and exit points where they are coming in from. And secondly, is also to make sure that the insects are gone, like the cockroaches, if they're infested with cockroaches or flies or ants or something like that, get them out of the house. But most times, these wall geckos, what about the ones that are actually inside of the house before that exclusion? Now they don't know how to get out. They don't have food to feed on. So they start roaming around inside the house. Well, we've got a couple of clients like that, and it's always call back, call back. Well, call back now. What do we want to go and do during that callback? Because I'm also aware that there are there are no products that are actually labeled to get rid of wall geckos, right? Based on my own research. I don't know. You are a researcher, so I'm trying to also like get that proper information correctly. So but what's your take basically in terms of wall gecko control in apartments?
So, am I hearing you correct? Are we talking about rodents or what
What
animal are we talking about?
wall geckos, wall gecko.
I guess I'm having trouble understanding.
Wall gecko, like lizards,
Oh,
like
wall
wall
gecko.
gecko. Yes, wall
Wall
gecko.
gecko.
Yes, wall gecko.
Yeah. I'm I'm not so we don't have wall geckos very much in the United States, in Florida and in the southern United States, but they're not usually considered pests.
Hmm.
Some people tolerate them and because they eat a lot of the insects that are around, cockroaches
Yeah.
and flies and spiders. Um, so growing up as a kid, I would love to catch geckos. I grew up in Florida, and we have three or four species there. I would catch them, sometimes give them names, sometimes they became my pets. Um, but yeah, they're not considered primary pests in the United States. And I would ask somebody, what's the problem? You know? Um, what, yeah, how many geckos can you tolerate? Zero? One? One per room? Um, I don't consider them to be problematic. Uh, so I think it's a cultural, that may be a cultural issue. Why are geckos considered pests? I consider them to be beneficial. I don't know if you're still with me. Maybe you heard my answer and you didn't like it,
Yes.
so you turned off your camera.
No, 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 no. No, I mean, you consider them to be beneficial pests. Wow. Like, well, it's we researchers or professionals, we are different at that when it comes to most of these
Yeah,
insects, right? But for
yeah.
other occupants like homeowners, they just want to make sure that these insects are gone totally in their apartment, right? So, I mean, we are also looking at perfect solutions. So I feel like maybe the best solution. I was also trying to see like if there's another type of treatment process that can actually work in terms of controlling them.
For
I mean,
geckos.
yes, for wall geckos. So, but looking at it
Yeah.
now, I think that the best strategy still remains the fact that um it still remains the fact that we have to still ensure that the insects that they feed on are gone, then
Uh-huh.
also do a proper exclusion. So, which like kind of like confirms my analogy or my strategy, right?
Yeah.
So now there is recently, I mean, there was a time one of my colleagues also asked this particular question, and she was like, "How exactly did Paris? There was an outbreak of bedbugs in Paris. Then I think about 2 years ago. But how exactly were they able to effectively get rid of these bedbugs, or are they still trying to solve it? What are the strategies that we can use in case of outbreaks like this coming to systems like Nigeria or countries like Nigeria or other countries? What's your take, basically?
I th- I think I think that was media hype. That's what I think.
Mm,
Because it was in association with the Olympics, right? It was during the Olympics,
yes,
and
yes.
so there was a media sensation. Remember,
Mm.
the media makes their money on hype
True.
and sensationalism. So Paris had bed bugs before that story, and they have bed bugs after that story.
Mm,
Um, Everybody has bed bugs if you look. Um, so I don't know that they were able to, as you say, eradicate the population. I think that the story went away. But anytime that people find bed bugs, the media wants to sensationalize it.
true.
But in fact, every continent on Earth, I wouldn't be surprised if there are bed bugs in Antarctica because we have researchers there living in dormitories.
True.
It's possible they have bed bugs there, you know, but there's
Mm.
no story about it. I think that there was anything special going on in Paris. It was media hype.
Wow. Wow. I think that's
Yeah.
exactly
And you
what
can find those stories all the time. If
it's.
you can do some bed bug headline or we
Mm,
found bed bugs at the library or, bed bugs get around. They're excellent hitchhikers. And because they drink our blood, very afraid of them. And so the media takes advantage of that and they sell their headlines.
Hmm. I
It's a
think I think
non-story to me.
I feel like that's one of the challenge that one of the problem that happened is just the media hype, like you said. Okay, so now there is a big problem, or let me say there's a big challenge here in
Yeah.
Africa
I'm
where
interested. I want to ask you a question.
okay, yeah, please go ahead. What's the question?
Yeah. So I wanted to go back to I wanted to go back to the wall geckos
Yeah,
and why do you think people do not tolerate them in their homes?
I feel like number
Are
one,
they afraid of them?
like it's just like I feel like yes, maybe some of them are afraid of them. I've got a couple of clients that are literally afraid of what geckos in their apartment. But secondly, it could be that sometimes, although they are not venomous, more geckos are not venomous. They don't transfer any disease or anything. And in fact, they're actually natural predators because they will actually feed on other insects that you have in your apartment. So I don't know why people are actually like scared of it, but sometimes people feel like they're contaminating their environment having this pest around. So I feel like that's one of the major problems.
Uh-huh.
It's not as if it has any effect.
Yeah.
Like I mean,
I mean, they do poop, right? They leave their
yeah,
excrement.
they leave the excrement. So like it's
Yeah.
just it's just ringing in my head now that literally these things are natural predators and they actually should be in your apartment. Indirectly, they should, right?
Yeah.
But on the long run,
Yeah.
people just don't want them in their space. So it's just a normal thing that the fact
Right.
that they don't want them in your
Well,
space.
yeah, that's what I was getting at. And so, we're in different worlds. If you're a pest control business person, then you need
Yeah,
to respond to the needs
exactly.
of your customer and maybe
Exactly.
respond, right? I'm coming at
Exactly.
it from an academic standpoint, and I like to think about how do people regard their place in the world. And it's very interesting. So you know the term natural. You heard the term natural.
Yes,
What does it
natural.
mean to you?
It's just like it should be in the
Yeah.
environment. Like it's inborn. Like it's there already. It's the environment. It's everything. It's
So
it's
are
just
we
there.
part of it or not?
We're,
Are
we're,
humans natural?
we're natural human beings. So we're natural. You know, we're just here.
Yeah.
We are all from God.
So if you look up the definition, yeah, if you look up the definition of natural, it's everything in the universe except for humans and except for what humans have made. So if I make
Hmm.
something, it's synthetic. It's not natural because
Yes.
it's man-made. But
Yes.
humans are part of nature.
Hmm.
And so I think humans all over the world, we have this attitude that we are separate from nature. And so we want to curate our homes and our spaces so that they
True.
are separate from nature. So this wall gecko, we see it as part of nature. It needs to be out of the house. But really, if we instead regard ourselves as part of nature, then we start to have more tolerance for, we understand what is this lizard doing in my house? Well, it's eating insects. It's not
Hmm.
venomous. It's not hurting me. But that is very difficult because humans do have this attitude that we are special and we are separate from the rest of nature.
Hmm.
And so this attitude is what drives this, what you said is they just don't want it in their home, right? So
True.
my home needs to be separate. So I put up walls. These walls keep it separate from nature.
True.
And so that's difficult because it's very, very arbitrary. We are human animals and we are part of nature. That's my
True.
belief.
True, true, true. That's a very important point of view to look at this particular insect and majorly the pest, basically, right? What
Yeah.
are the key components of successful IPM strategy? Like, what are the things that we need to look out for when you're having a successful IPM strategy in solving pest problem in any apartment? Maybe in a facility, or what are the things that we need to look out for? Okay, yes, these are the things that will make us quantify this operation as a successful integrated pest management strategy.
I think that any good IPM program has effective communication
Mm,
among the parties involved.
nice.
So, if you are talking about an apartment complex, that means that you have clear and open communication between the residents, the staff, the management, and the pest control provider. All of those stakeholders are part of the team, and
Mm,
we have problems when there's a breakdown in communication. So, if you think about it, the residents, they help us know when there's a problem, where there's a problem. So
mm,
they have to have the feeling that they are free to communicate. There should be no penalty or stigma for their communication.
mm,
So, um, if you have that line of communication open, they do your job for you. They help you to monitor the problem. So
mm,
that's the first thing is to have really good communication. Sometimes the residents are afraid of management, or the residents are afraid of the staff, and they don't communicate, or they don't want the pest control to come into their home. You know, they don't trust what you're doing. And so all of those are breakdowns of communication. So without that, you cannot be successful. Even if you have excellent knowledge, excellent tools, and execution of your tools, you can't be successful without that team. You know, you have to have the team. Once you have that team in place, I think the next step is to establish some kind of record keeping. And
mm,
it's not just record keeping that the pest control might do to keep track of what has been applied. Maybe you have to report that to the government. I don't know. I'm talking about what we call an activity log that lives at the site. So if it's an apartment complex, you should be able to go to the manager's office and find a book that has a page
mm,
for each unit that talks about what has been done in this unit. What's the history of this unit?
mm,
Have we always had a cockroach problem in this unit, or is it new? And so when you have those kinds of records, it really helps you to design strategies for individual units within that apartment building. So on top of those things, I think the strategy should always be prevention. If we can prevent rodents from coming in, maybe the wall geckos, maybe when we build that structure, there's no geckos in there. They have to get in later. So in theory, if we can prevent them from coming in, they will never be regarded as pests. Bedbugs. Can we prevent the bedbugs from ever coming in? It will be
mm,
difficult, but we can try. So anyway, I think those are the things that people often overlook: communication, record keeping, and prevention. Once
mm.
we start managing the pest, we have a lot of good tools, and you have a lot of experience. Probably your technicians have good experience, so they know what to do. But it's always much easier if we can prevent those major infestations early before they get
Mm.
big. So that would be
Amazing.
my strategy: is make sure you have a good team, good
Number one,
communication.
number one, good team. Number two, good communication, proper monitoring. And number four that I got out of this is policy. Have a written document of every single process, right? And I feel like even the university system that we went to last Saturday, one of the major discussion that we had is to ensure that the students or the school itself have a proper treatment policy to get rid of pests or bed bugs in their apartments, or I mean in their hostels. That would really help a whole lot, right? So now there is a vast advancement when it comes to pesticide resistance, or let me say pesticide resistance are actually growing up. And especially in cockroach control. So far, we've been talking about bed bugs. I mean, there is also German cockroaches. We have like a lot of German cockroach infestation here, and see how cockroach control, how pesticide resistance and is affecting cockroach and bedbug populations. So what are alternative tools or techniques that you see that would actually help in IPM? Then what exactly is this word pesticide resistance? pesticide resistance itself? What
Yeah.
exactly does it mean?
Yeah. Pesticide resistance is one of the major challenges in pest control. And the way that it develops is when we use similar chemical tactics over and over and over again. Um, this has been happening since we have had synthetic insecticides, since the
Mm,
1940s. Um, and so if you think about it, maybe you have a population of animals and it's diverse. Within that population, you have lots of different genetic profiles. Some of us, and we can think about humans, so some of us are better able to survive an infection.
mm,
Some of us can run faster than others.
yeah.
Some of us um, maybe are more intelligent than others, and so these are rooted in genetics. And so in a population of pests, you will have some that naturally will be affected less by your pesticide than the others. Maybe it's a very small percentage. Maybe
Mm,
only 1% or less are going to be resistant in this way. But when you apply that material, you kill all the other 99. So you're left with the strong one. Maybe the strong one finds another strong one and they reproduce. And so over time, that population, if you're using the same chemical tactic over and over again, that population grows to the point where it may be 100% resistant because you're selecting for the resistant genes. And so this has happened with all of our major pest species. Um, Houseflies were the first insect where we documented resistance. And it was
yeah.
only, I think, 8 years after DDT was first used. So, we made this big discovery, DDT, it works great. And then just 7 or 8 years later, we realized, okay, well, this one insect that has a very fast reproductive cycle has already become resistant. The material doesn't work anymore. And so with bed bugs, all over the world, we have pyrethroid insecticide resistance. So you can collect bed bugs from Europe, Africa, Asia, North America, and those populations are not naive. They have been living out in the environment, being challenged with pyrethroids. Maybe they're professional products, but also the aerosol products that the consumer can buy, they have the same active ingredients or the same class of insecticides. So we have tens of thousands of generations of these insects being challenged with the same class of insecticides. And all of a sudden, we realize they don't work anymore. All of the insects are resistant. So you may say, okay, well, we need to switch to a different insecticide. And that will work for a short time. But over time, you will drive resistance to that other class of insecticides as well. So about 20 years ago, in the United States, we started using neonicotinoids for use against bed bugs.
Mm,
There are products in the United States that are a combination. They have a pyrethroid and well, if we come across a population that is resistant to pyrethroids, the
yeah.
neonicotinoids will kill them. And in
Mm,
in many cases that was true. But now
yes.
we have lots of populations in the US and I think in other places in the world that are resistant to the neonicotinoids.
Exactly.
And
Even
so,
even even in
the
fipronil, there
yeah,
was there was there was an article that was published on the PMP magazine about I think April 29th or so, because I read their magazines a lot. So I discovered that they said fipronil, bedbugs are now gaining resistance to fipronil. That's feniparozoles. And I mean, although in the article they stated it that not the fipronils are actually not manufactured for bedbug control. So basically cockroach control. So there's no really no fear about it. But I mean, over application of these insecticides has really caused pesticide resistance. But now there's a video I watched from Mr. Jeff White, the owner of White Mantis Consultancy, who is a
Yeah.
bed. I think it was part of Bedbug Central. I don't know if he's still there. And in his training,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
He knows a
he
lot
had
about bed bugs.
I mean, he was the first person I brought. Okay, no, I think the second person I brought on my show, Pest Inside show. Then, when it was a Pest Inside about 4 years or 5 years ago, because he's literally like my mentor when it comes to bedbug control. So, I mean, there was one of his video that he did in a conference where he talked about there's a misconception about pesticide resistance, right? That's over application. It only means that all you need to do to beat resistance is that the pest would now die only when you've applied a lot or more than the required quantity, right? So like there are two things now. Is it that pesticide resistance is based on the fact that over application of the that same insecticide, or is just based on the fact that oh the insect will only die if you have too much of that product? You know, there are two things now. So I need a clarity on that. I know a lot of people are actually going to be needing that
Yeah.
clarity on that part too.
No, it's true. It's true. Typically, resistance is measured um, in what they call resistance ratio, and
Mm,
so at some concentration, they may still die, but at the
mm,
concentration on the product label, they will not. So
mm,
it's not that they are totally immune to this toxin. It's just that their bodies have developed detoxification processes, or in some cases, they have behavioral modifications that enable them to survive normal doses of this toxin. So, um, but for all intents and purposes, the material doesn't work anymore, right? So we can argue that, well, they're not resistant; they're just more tolerant.
mm.
But the point is, you make the application according to the product label, and they don't die. Yes, he's
Yeah.
right.
Okay. So it's just like basically when you apply it to the correct to the product label, they might not die, right? So you just need to add more, increase the quantity of that particular product, which is that's a very good clarity there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but in
So
some cases that will be illegal. So I don't know what the laws are for you,
if
but
if
we
it's
are bound by the label of the product.
if it's illegal here in Nigeria, everybody virtually almost everybody should be in jail.
Yeah,
So so
but
yeah.
then you see also that would be a temp collecting for insects that survive higher
Mm,
and higher concentrations. So you're getting to the point where eventually you would need to apply the concentrate without any dilution.
mm,
Um, and that would create environment or uh, so that's not a sustainable way to deal with resistance.
mm,
It is through IPM, and IPM uses non-chemical tactics in addition to chemical tactics.
mm.
So if you're using a vacuum, are the bed bugs resistant to the vacuum? How do they become resistant to the vacuum? It's much more
Exactly.
difficult for them to become resistant to that vacuum than it is to the insecticide, you know?
Mm.
So they would have to be very strong, right, to hold on to the substrate to not be vacuumed up.
True. So you're basically saying that we need to also look beyond.
Resistance. Bed bugs don't develop resistance to vacuums or to steam in the same way that they do to insecticides.
So you're basically saying that we should look beyond insecticide application and use more of non-chemical control, which is vacuums and all. So they would literally not gain
Yes,
resistance
if you have
to.
a resistant population,
Yeah,
that's a key to success. Yes. Now,
amazing,
you may have a susceptible population, and your insecticide may be very, very effective. And sometimes that's the easiest and cheapest treatment tool. But yeah, if you find that you have a resistant population, you may need to think about some of these non-chemical tools. Yeah.
amazing.
And do you ever test the populations of bed bugs that you encounter? Maybe you have a facility where you can take some bed bugs, put them in
True.
a container of some kind or expose them to a treated surface and just see, will my application kill them? You
True.
know, sometimes it won't.
So as a researcher, how do you so literally for me now, if I'm going to do any maybe pesticide resistant test, how is it possible to carry out a self-made, maybe not a full laboratory pesticide resistant test on insecticides? I mean on insects, maybe bedbugs or
Yeah.
cockroaches, German cockroaches. Is there
Yeah.
any way?
So yeah, one simple way to do it is just expose the insects to a treated surface and give them
Mm.
some period of time. Um, you know,
Mm.
you may expose them for an hour and then move them to another container and just see if they die. It's a very simple, what I would call a quick and dirty efficacy test. But
Mm.
you're not going to learn the resistance ratio by that kind of test, but you will learn, did the insect die or not? And
True.
so if they don't die in your controlled setting, there's no way they're going to die in the field. You see?
Mm. True.
So you can have an idea of resistance. If you're having trouble at a particular site, you can do this kind of test to see if maybe you're dealing with a resistant population.
Hmm. That's a very good
Yeah,
point of view to look at
yeah.
bedbug control and at that point, so I
So,
mean yeah,
Shofu, I
yes.
need to tell you that in 3 minutes I have a phone call with somebody else.
Okay, okay. I mean, it's been a wonderful, wonderful discussion so far. And I mean, let's just wrap with this last question. So, in your view, what are the biggest gaps, in current pest control trainings when it comes to implementing effective IPM across different species? What are the gaps? What are things that we need to look out for in our trainings? What are things we need to look out for in in training our technicians in advancing technology and even like latest research also as a researcher, so you can help us with some other things that we need to look out for.
Um, I think with practitioners like your team, I would pay a lot of attention to inspection.
Mm,
Um, and in order to do a good inspection, you have to know about the pest biology and ecology. So, I guess it all comes back to biology and ecology. So, for instance, cockroaches. Certain cockroaches live and breed in very humid, warm environments, and they may
mm,
not do very well inside the home. On the
yeah.
other hand, German cockroaches do just fine inside our kitchens or bathrooms. That's as much moisture as they need. And so if I come into a home and I'm looking for American cockroaches, I might look in a very different place than if I was looking for German cockroaches.
Yeah.
So I think just tying the biology of the pest to the habitat and the habits will help your inspectors be better at finding their target.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, that's one thing I would say is just getting better at inspections and then using tools for inspections. Learning how to use uh, like a mirror. Do you guys ever use extended mirrors to look
extended
under
mirrors.
or behind something?
Mm,
Um, or yeah, just getting better at inspections. That's when I meet with new technicians, that seems to be the area where they need the most help
mm.
is inspections.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. I feel like this is one of the best advice to end this show with. Basically inspection, proper education, understanding pest biology and ecology. It's very important so that professionals can actually have effective pest control because you can't treat what you don't know and you are only good as what you know. So it's important that and again in pest control, you can't use yesterday's battle to fight today's war. Every pest have different treatment method, and every treatment method have different application method in solving the pest problem. So there's always a different view to it every single time. So you can only do very good for yourself by updating by staying updated about the latest techniques, latest strategies, and latest information that has to do with pest control. So it has been a wonderful, wonderful session so far. I mean, we spent more than an hour, gisting and talking about proper solution and effective pest management strategy. So it all boils down to the fact that we are just really glued at the point of educating more people. And I'm sure that people who are listening or who are going to listen to this podcast would also have a lot to learn and take home. And definitely they will have questions and informations that they would like to, get more informations on. So I mean, it's been a wonderful session. I would really, really say thank you very much for joining me on the PestXperience Show. We've been trying to do this for a very long time. And now it's
It's
finally
my
happening.
pleasure.
It's finally happening, and
Yeah.
I'm super, super excited. In fact, I learned a lot, and I'm definitely going to see how, we're going to also bring in most of all this advanced equipment into our own systems, our policies, and all. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add up before we call it a day or call it a wrap on the show. So what will it be? Maybe an
I'll
advice?
just say
Yeah.
I'll just say thank you. Thank you for your service to your community.
Thank
Everybody who's
you.
in pest control, you're making the world a better place to live in. So thank
Mm,
you for that. And I learned from you. You're in the field. I'm not always in the field. So
mm,
hopefully we learn from each other. And
amazing.
let's do this again. Let's talk about other things some other time.
Amazing. Amazing. I look forward to that. I look forward to that. Thank you very much for every single one who have listened to this podcast. I thank you very much. So if you have any informations or any questions, please hit the subscribe button, or you can send us a message at Insight Radio _. Follow us on our YouTube channel, follow us on our Instagram channel, follow us on all our social media platforms. My name is Shofu. Bye bye.